Hello, OT amplifiers, and welcome to this episode of the Amplify OT podcast. This episode is a little bit different because I am interviewing the individuals who are running for President-elect of AOTA and Vice President of AOTA. These are elected board positions for AOTA, and elections are opening on February 2nd of 2024 and close on February 23rd of 2024. Because there were so many candidates and they had such fantastic things to say, we have actually broken up these interviews into 3 separate podcast episodes. 2 episodes are dedicated to President-elect, and 1 episode is dedicated to the Vice President. Now, I do want to make it super clear that there is absolutely no rhyme or reason as to why certain folks were grouped together or what order they appear in. I also want to make sure it's clear that I, myself, and Amplify OT are not endorsing any specific candidate. I think all of them have such an interesting perspective to bring to the position, and it's really going to be a tough choice. So I encourage you to listen to all the different interviews and hear the different perspectives, but also hear where they overlap in mission. For AOTA President-elect interviews, you will be hearing from Karen Sames, Michael Pizzi, Vikram Pagpatan, and Arame Anverzadeh. For Vice President, you will hear from Natalie Chang Wright and Christina Reyes. And I just want to say that I am so grateful that all of them agreed to participate in this project and that they are willing to put forward their time to support our profession for the better. There are numerous reasons to participate in this election, not only because we're voting for President-elect and the Vice President, but there are also 4 individuals running for open positions on the board of directors. Now, unfortunately, many of these positions run unopposed. And while it's fantastic to see individuals who are getting involved and are willing to serve our profession, it's always great to have a choice. It's also unfortunate that for some positions, there were no nominations received, such as the Mental Health Special Interest Section Chairperson, the Home and Community Health Special Interest Section Chairperson, and the OTA representative-elect to the Representative Assembly. Unfortunately, there were no RA nominations received in Alabama, Connecticut, Georgia, Illinois, Kansas, Maryland, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin. So if you live in any of those states and you're an AOTA member, I highly encourage you to consider running for the Representative Assembly so that you can represent the interests and beliefs of your state. A few years ago, AOTA put out statistics saying that on average, only 4% of AOTA members vote in AOTA elections. We need to make that change. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into these interviews, and I can't wait to hear your perspectives. Our next interview is Natalie Chang Wright, who's running for VP of AOTA. Natalie Chang Wright is an accomplished leader with over 3 decades of experience in occupational therapy. She holds an MBA in healthcare management and is a COTA or COTA. Throughout her distinguished career, she has been honored with several military ribbons and prestigious awards, including AOTA's Roster of Honor and OTA Award of Excellence. Natalie's expertise lies in leadership, strategic management, and program development, with roles ranging from clinician to clinical director of operations and academician. She is a dedicated advocate for equity and inclusion. She holds certificates in related fields and actively engages in volunteer work. She is the current chair of AOTA's inaugural DEI committee. Natalie is a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, a service-based organization that aims to empower women through service and sisterhood. She contributes leadership, strategic planning, marketing, and education in her role as the chair of her local chapter, the Advocate for Social Justice Committee. Natalie's leadership philosophy, rooted in servant leadership, emphasizes creating thriving environments through service, confidence, and empowering collective spirit. Her 30-plus year commitment to occupational therapy reflects a passion for positive change, advocacy, and making a meaningful impact beyond titles. So I'm happy to welcome Natalie Chang Wright to the Amplify OT podcast. Well, welcome, Natalie, to the Amplify OT podcast. I am so excited to have you here today. You are running for Vice President of AOTA on the board, and I would love for you to tell our community a little bit about yourself. Looking at your bio, you've done a lot of different things, from the military to DEI, and you were telling me about how you grew up in both Jamaica and the US. So you have a lot of different stories building your perspectives.
Well, hello, Clarice. Thank you for having me in this space and giving me the opportunity to share with the occupational therapy community about who I am. So as you mentioned, I'm Natalie Chang Wright. I am an occupational therapy assistant. I've been one for this year will be 34 years in the profession. I started off in the military in the United States Army. And I tell people that occupational therapy found me because, like plenty of us who entered the field of occupational therapy, we may not have either known about it until someone presented it to us
Mm-hmm.
or didn't have much experience in that area. And true story, I wanted to, at the age that I joined the military, I wanted to pursue a career as a child psychologist. And
Wow.
the recruiters thought that occupational therapy would have, been a good segue for that. So fast forward to today, obviously, I did not become a child psychologist. And I do have some experience working with children, but just for a short amount of time. And I realized, although that's what I thought I wanted to do, it was not. So most of my experience in occupational therapy from the clinical side has been in hand therapy. I did a lot of
Mm,
hand therapy in the Army, and that's fairly common, or
yeah.
it was when I was in the Army. I spent a long time working in inpatient rehab facilities. I think that's my love. And I also worked as a civilian for the Army, working with wounded warriors or wounded servicemen and women for the Warrior Transition Battalion. And my role there was more on the end of working on coordinating transition
Mm,
into different areas, opportunities for gainful employment, be it staying in the military and maybe reclassifying to another job or addressing different aspects of the job that they were currently doing or working on transitioning out of the military, whether
yeah.
into the role of a student, learner, or into a job that was similar to what they were doing in the military or something totally different. Nonetheless, we hope to foster like goal setting and really affording the service members to have a voice in
Yeah.
terms of their future, which is something unique based on my experience in the
Yes.
military. Being able to have a voice. Um,
Yes.
and so thereafter, I transitioned into the academic setting full time. I worked as an OTA program director for a long time, and I really enjoyed it. I was very apprehensive about transitioning into that space full time because I'd done some adjunct teaching, guest lecturing in different capacities. But my primary worry was, am I going to get the same type of rewards as when I work with
Right.
clients who have physical or neurological or cognitive disabilities or disorders? And the answer was yes. It
Oh,
was
good.
very fulfilling working with students. The rewards show up differently.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the rewards would show up when you ask a question or there's conversation and you see the lights go off, where they have this aha moment like, yes, okay. They understood, or and the culmination, of course, is watching them
Yeah.
go across the stage at graduation, and then when they come back and say, "Thank you for helping me, thank you for your guidance," and those sorts of things. Actually, one of a former student posted something on my LinkedIn page about me being the best, and it just warms my heart that I, contributed to her learning and in some small way her success in what she's doing
Yeah.
in the profession. So that's, in terms of my work with OT, but on a more personal level, I am a mother, I am a wife, I'm a volunteer, and I think I'm a pretty good friend.
Well, that's fantastic. And what a diverse and interesting background in some ways, really kind of being at the root, right, of OT, where we got started in that kind of World War I, World War II era of helping service men kind of find their purpose after war. So I think that's really fantastic and seeing that in the modern age. And so this begs the question of why are you running for vice president and why now?
Well, that's a good question. Why not now? Now is the time, right? Seize the
Yeah.
moment and and the opportunities that present itself. But I'm running for vice president because I have an unwavering commitment to advancing the profession of occupational therapy. And those who know me or have heard me speak before, I also am very committed to advancing the standing of occupational therapy assistants in the profession. I recognize that there are several pivotal moments, throughout our lifetime. And there's one right now where we're facing both challenges and opportunities. And I think now is the time for a continuation of strong leadership. I will say that throughout my career in occupational therapy, I have been very impressed by the people who have been elected or appointed into leadership positions within the association. And, I have more than 30 years of experience in the clinical setting, I should say a combination of 30 years of clinical, academic, and leadership experiences that I can draw from. I don't think that people put the two terms leadership and OTA in the same sentence or, even in the same conversation. And I would like to be an example of perseverance, an example of being brave, an example of, although in my personal life I tend to be a more risk averse, this is somewhat of a risk, right?
Yes.
Put myself out there and hoping that people will have an understanding of who I am and what I've accomplished and what I would still like to accomplish in the future, especially in, such a highly visible and important position within the organization. But I'm confident that my track record and my dedication, and my vision, and that my vision aligns with the current needs of the profession. So I think I would be an ideal candidate for the role in this moment at this time.
Well, good. And I definitely can endorse your perspective on showing that OTAs are absolutely qualified and important to get involved in leadership. And I think that's a really great example. And, it's always nice when you can kind of see yourself in someone else. And so I love to see the representation of OTAs in that way.
Yes,
so
indeed.
What would be your kind of day one priorities, right? Like when people run for president of the United States, they have these kind of day one priorities. What would be the things that you would want to focus on if it was up to you?
On day one, I think my immediate priorities revolve around strengthening communication channels within the association. And I say strengthen because I think the communication channels are already strong. However, I also know that there's always opportunity and room for improvement. And I think recently that's been some of the criticisms that the association has received in terms of how information is communicated with others or how advocacy efforts are communicated or should be communicated. Um, you know, in terms of an actual day one, is just a snippet of some of the things that I would like to work on, to address within the association. And so because some of this stuff is new to me, you see my bio, or if you look at my resume, you will see that I don't have a lot of association experience in terms of volunteer leadership. And people might wonder why. Well, why would she be running if she doesn't have the experience, and honestly, I have experience in a lot of things that align with the role of vice president for the association. And so I understand that things currently exist. I would love to be able to review the existing programs so that we can determine as a board if it's relevant, if it's effective, is it working on collaborative initiatives with key persons of interest? And I believe the answer is yes. But I would like to take a deep dive to be able to see these things for myself, to be able to then have a better understanding of how to position and align myself in the role as vice president, which one of the primary roles of the vice president, not only is it to support the president of the association, but also taking ownership of leading and guiding the conversations and the steps and the strategic planning for the association and for our profession. So I seldom enter into new situations like I know everything. I don't know everything, but I want to know as much as I can, as much as possible. And so one of the ways of doing that is communicating, like what have we done? What have we accomplished? Sure, I can read those things, but actually having open and honest and transparent conversations about what have we done, what have worked, and where are opportunities for improvement. I think fostering open communication, assessing the efficiency of the programs and the initiatives and advocacy efforts, laying the groundwork for collaboration. I think there's lots of opportunities for us to collaborate with other entities and, just really addressing the immediate needs while setting the stage for long-term success. What I try not to have in any situation that I'm in, whether it's a volunteer role or a paid role, is that upon my departure, let's say I am voted in for vice president, and it's a 3-year term. My goal is that my successor or successors would have a framework outlined for them so they can, with guidance, take the ball and run with it and not have to recreate the wheel. And I trust that exists, that those systems exist within within the association. But if not, I'll be doing lots of hard work and lots of reading, to get caught up. I also think another area to focus on, not necessarily accomplish much on day one, really, because what can we accomplish on day one? Except doing deep dives into what has happened, what we would like to happen, and then making plans to get there. But addressing advocacy issues, especially decisions about healthcare, and our standing in the community, different policies that are currently in Congress, that affects our profession. So really day one, I will have on my swimsuit and I'll be taking
taking a dive in. Well, I think that transitions very well, and you've kind of summarized this. Of what do you think is the primary role or mission of AOTA within our profession?
I think the primary role is to advance the work of occupational therapy. We in doing so, we have to advance and really showcase the quality of work that we provide to OT consumers, our availability. And, sometimes we say, OT is all encompassing. We can be in everywhere, and in every space. And while we can, I think we have the opportunity to kind of reset in some areas and reestablish the ownership of what occupational therapy, like the distinct and unique value of what we bring in the healthcare arena, right? And I know that we have branched out from traditional healthcare into emerging opportunities, but at the crux of the matter, we really have to hone in and take a look at why are we here? What is our purpose, right? And our purpose is to, provide the best quality health care, to contribute to the health and well-being of the public that we serve, and to help to educate those about what we bring to the table. I think also, the mission is operationalized or activated through our advocacy efforts, through professional development and, collaboration across different sectors of our profession, as well as the other professionals that we work closely with, and the ones that we want to work closely with, where the
Yes.
opportunity might not have presented itself. But we have to make ways, for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
hearing that overall theme, right? Of that strengthening that foundation while then looking for opportunities to branch out.
exactly. Yes.
Excellent.
I think AOTA plays a pivotal role in shaping policy,
Mm-hmm.
promoting research, and making sure that the profession is growing and is being
Yeah.
recognized as an essential healthcare profession. You know, I have said this before that occupational therapy is like the best kept secret.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for that secret to become a rumor.
I like that.
It's time for us to start whispering in other people's ears, right, about occupational therapy. So that my dream for OT is that we will be a household, we'll be recognized in every household, you
Yeah.
know. And when I think about every household, what does every household have? A television and a computer. So, those are the spaces that we have to get into people's minds and hearts. And I believe our profession is going to blossom once more people know about who we are and what
Absolutely.
we bring.
And I think it brings up such a good perspective of how we can try and get people involved as well as spread awareness. And I think that, will allow me to jump a couple questions ahead of, within our last workforce survey that was conducted by AOTA, it showed that 25% of practitioners are considering leaving the field of occupational therapy. And additionally, AOTA also had a 7% drop in membership this past year. So, do you think these issues are related? And in your opinion, what do you think would be the best way to address these issues within our workforce and within the association?
I believe there's likely a correlation between practitioner dissatisfaction and the drop in AOTA membership.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens. I would be naive, or anybody else I think would be naive to think that every single member is happy with what we offer, right? I mean, in even in small spaces, I think about relationships with
Mm-hmm.
people, whether at work or at play, and there's always going to be some type of dissatisfaction in some area, and I think part of it is because people might not understand how the association can actually help them in their
Mm-hmm.
profession. I think to address some of the dissatisfaction, we really have to do a comprehensive analysis. And I know that the staff at AOTA, as well as some of the current board members, have been working on, addressing labor force challenges and, decreasing membership within the association. I believe we have to engage members so that we can understand their concerns.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to know if when a member decides to depart, similar to if someone decides to resign from their job, that there is an exit interview of sort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that something like that exists so that we can get a better understanding
Mm-hmm.
of why the individual decided to no longer be a member. Because I think that can help to shape some initiatives to help to maintain the membership that we currently have, as well as opportunities to recruit more members.
Yeah.
AOTA offers a wealth of professional development, and I think that we could do a better job. The association can do a better job at advertising that more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons why people join national and state associations for the benefit of professional development. I also think there's a great opportunity to offer higher level certifications for OTAs,
Mm. Yeah.
especially for those who are practitioners. I think that would be attractive, especially if it's, cost effective.
Yes.
We got
That
to think
little
about cost.
that little
Yeah.
piece in there, right? And
Little
so,
piece in there. Yes.
and you've already stated that you believe that membership is important, but I'd love for you to explain why you feel so passionately that membership, whether it be in AOTA or also potentially in our state associations, is so important.
I have, for ever since my childhood, I've
Mm-hmm.
always been involved in some sort of like civic engagement or, something along the sort. So, I think probably like most little ones, either, our parents put us in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or, something of the sort. And for those who go to church, some kind of,
Mm-hmm.
adventure club at church or something of the sort. And so, I have been a part of these types of organizations since childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, it's commonplace. It's like a no-brainer. It's like this is a priority in my budget, is to
Mm-hmm.
pay my membership dues because I want to contribute to our profession
Yeah.
in a broader way. And, there have been times where all I had the bandwidth for was to pay for membership.
Yeah.
And that was it, and then there are times where I've had opportunities that my personal life or my professional life was not so demanding, like times like now where I can do something more than simply being a member. I'll make a reference to that. So when I was fully engaged at church, well, I shouldn't say fully engaged, for many years, because I was doing so many things. I considered myself a bench member at church, right? So, I show up, I pay my tithes, I, do my thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go home. And then at some point I say, I need to contribute on a greater level. And so then I just did, and I felt so great about it. Not that I felt bad when I was just a bench member doing that,
Mm-hmm.
because that is what I had the capacity of doing. Um,
Right.
However, I know that my contributions, my financial contributions, even finite, helps to contribute to the advocacy efforts that we so much need in this
Mm-hmm.
profession. I think AOTA advocates for us in various spaces and for various policies to help support the profession, like workforce diversity. We're
Yeah.
advocating for federal policies to improve diversity, although let's not use that word in Florida, of the workforce, by increasing the number of practitioners.
Mm-hmm.
We are working towards that. Um, Reimbursement and coverage and payment policies. As we know, the Regulatory Affairs Department, they advocate like nobody's business. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they are some powerful people working for our association and
Yeah.
volunteering for our association. They're advocating for us to have fair coverage,
Mm-hmm.
of payment policies, and referrals, and
Yeah.
sometimes federal or state or county policies can impede consumers' ability to receive OT services because of reimbursement challenges. I could not fight that alone. My
Yeah.
members, our membership dues contributes to being able to advocate on that level. There was just a session that the Advocacy
Mm-hmm.
Affairs Department had, and they were talking about healthcare access and telehealth.
Yeah.
I wonder how many of our OT practitioners who are providing telehealth services are aware that those services might not receive reimbursement at the end of this year.
Yeah.
And so who else is going to be the voice for us, right?
Yeah.
Our membership dues contributes to that and so much more. So I think our advocacy efforts for the association is definitely aligned with the mission to advance the work of OT. And again, to enhance the health and well-being of the consumers that we serve. And without
Yeah.
this level of advocacy, honestly, where would we be as a
Exactly.
profession?
I can't agree more. It's a big part of what I say as well. And so I want to thank you for coming on. But before we leave, my last question for you is why should someone vote for you?
So I say someone, not someone, everyone. Everyone
Okay.
should vote.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So why should everyone vote for you?
Yes. I say everyone should vote. You're right. If you meet the criteria for voting, which in AOTA, it means that you would be a member of the
Mm-hmm.
association. then I think everyone should vote. And I'm really hoping that the voting community of AOTA that will show up in droves. Actually, you don't have to show up. You have to click, log into the website and choose Natalie Chang Wright for vice president. But in all seriousness, I will say that based on my proven track record of leadership, of dedication to advancing occupational therapy and promoting greater inclusion for occupational therapy assistants, I have a vision for a stronger and more united association as well as profession. I have over a decade of experience in academia and, a total of 3 decades in the profession. I think I bring a strategic mindset. I have a commitment to inclusivity. As you may know, I'm the chairperson for AOTA's DEI committee. And I have a wealth of experience that I believe will contribute to the continued success of our profession.
Fantastic.
So I would like for you to vote for Natalie Chang Wright. And I promise you, I'll showcase my dedication to fostering an inclusive and thriving occupational therapy community.
Well, that was a fantastic stump speech, and I want to thank you for coming on today. It's been so great to let people hear from you, and I agree. Everyone should go and vote in today's election, and I think together we can increase the normal participation that we see that's a little unfortunate in most elections. So hopefully we'll see some better engagement. So thank you so much, Natalie. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Clarice. It was very great being here.
Hey, I'm Clarice, and I'm the founder of Amplify OT, and thank you so much for either watching this video or listening to the Amplify OT podcast. If you haven't already, I strongly encourage you to listen to all the different interviews. And of course, I encourage you to join our Amplifiers community at learn.amplifyot.com in order to continue this important conversation. You can now join the Amplify OT membership for free, or we have our full access passes. I have the link in the description for you, or you can go to learn.amplifyot.com. You can also join our community by downloading the Amplify OT app, now available on iOS devices. Our mission at Amplify OT is to make learning about policy easy so that you can engage in advocacy. And a key part of advocacy is voting, so I sincerely hope you participate in this year's AOTA elections. Voting opens on February 2nd, 2024 and closes on February 23rd at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Time. And as a reminder, you must be a member of AOTA as of January 2nd in order to vote, and you must also be an active member at the time that you cast your vote. So thank you again to all the candidates for participating in this project. It is so exciting to see this level of energy around this election. And of course, I hope you come back to Amplify OT to learn more about Medicare, billing, policy, and advocacy, so that you can be the change that you want to see in our healthcare system and within our profession. Thanks so much again for watching, and don't forget to share this video so that others can hear what the candidates have to say. And, of course, make sure to subscribe to the Amplify OT podcast on your favorite podcast app. Remember, if you don't advocate for occupational therapy, who will?